The room was too quiet for a Tuesday morning. The soft light streaming through the blinds barely illuminated Margaret's tired eyes, as she held her daughter's hand as if she knew this would be the last touch. The television in the corner played only the sound of the local news, but no one paid attention. Beth, her oldest daughter, kept her eyes fixed on the heart monitor, as if it could delay the inevitable. Tears welling in her eyes, she whispered, "Mommy, it's going to be okay. I promise." Margaret squeezed her daughter's fingers lightly. There wasn't much else to say. The cancer had advanced too quickly, sapping the energy of a woman who had sustained her family with courage and faith for over 70 years. Beth remembered her mother always saying, "Daughter, all we have in this life is our word. Never break it." It was the last thing she wanted to hear from her mother, but she didn't repeat it. Instead, she whispered something even stranger. "Take care of Sarah. Don't forget the blue safe." Beth froze. Blue safe. Sarah. There was something between the lines of that sentence that seemed more than just a grandmother's request to her granddaughter. Before I continue, I want to say that I ask God to bless you with all His infinite love, giving you much health, peace, joy, and faith, for we can never lose faith in God, for He will never abandon us, for His love is eternal and infinite. I also want to ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me a lot, thank you. The monitor made a long, continuous sound. Margaret departed peacefully, but left more questions than answers. Beth cried, yes, but there was a weight on her shoulders that no one there understood. Her brother, Michael, arrived too late. "Has he gone yet?" he asked breathlessly. Beth simply nodded. The silence in the room, now eternal, held a secret. And her granddaughter's name echoed like a warning that could not be ignored. Outside the hospital, Sarah, her 19-year-old granddaughter, waited in the car. She didn't know what had happened inside, she just felt a chill. "Something's wrong, I know it," she whispered to herself. Minutes later, Beth came out and got into the car without saying a word. She just started the engine and drove off. Sarah, her eyes welling up, asked, "Did she say something to me?" Her mother hesitated, then lied, "No, honey. She was very weak." That night, in the family's old house, Beth went to her mother's study. Everything looked the same, the family photos, the cookbooks with Bible notes, the worn armchair in the corner. But there was something that caught her eye, a small gold key in the desk drawer. Without thinking twice, she picked it up. And her heart raced. She remembered what her mother had said, "Blue safe." Did that really exist? Beth went down to the basement. It was damp, smelling of old wood and untold stories. In a corner covered by a blanket, she found a small, locked blue box. Her hands trembled. She inserted the key. Click. Inside were documents, photos, and something that took her breath away, a handwritten letter titled "Final Will and Testament of Margaret Jane Collins." But she had already given her lawyer a will. So what was that? The letter was dated 2 months before her hospitalization. And it was completely different from the official will Beth had shown her family. In it, Margaret declared that she would leave half of her inheritance to Sarah, her granddaughter, and the other half to Michael, her youngest son. Beth was not mentioned directly. Just one sentence, "Forgive me, daughter, but your greed has frightened me." The shock was immediate. What to do now? Beth ran upstairs. She tore up the letter. Yes, she did. She grabbed a lighter and burned the papers right there, in the living room fireplace. No one needed to know. Her mother's decision was wrong, she thought. She had cared for Margaret until the end. She deserved everything, not that irresponsible teenager and that barely their brother. But what Beth didn't know was that God has His own ways of revealing the truth. And sometimes, He uses the unlikely. The next day, Sarah woke to a noise coming from the backyard. It was an envelope, apparently thrown under the gate. Inside was a copy of the same letter Beth had burned. It was in her grandmother's handwriting, no doubt. Sarah read it in disbelief. Her hands trembled. "This changes everything," she whispered. Her mother's name wasn't there. But who had sent this? And why would anyone have a copy? She sensed something strange in the air, as if she were being watched. Michael also received an envelope. Identical. With the same copy. He picked up the phone and called Beth. "I got a letter. Something strange. Did you know about this?" Beth froze. "What letter?" she pretended. "Mom's will, another one. Signed. She left everything to Sarah and me." Beth hung up without answering. Her heart pounded. Someone was playing her. But who? There were no witnesses. Or were there? Just then, a man got out of a taxi in front of Margaret's house. He was tall, wearing a brown hat and carrying a battered briefcase. He rang the doorbell. Sarah answered. "Hello, my name is Raymond Miller. I'm an old friend of your grandmother's. She asked me for a favor weeks before she died." Sarah's eyes widened. "A favor?" Raymond smiled ruefully. "Yes. He asked me to keep a copy of the real will, and only give it to her if anything sounded strange." Sarah froze. The man before her seemed to have stepped straight out of an old movie, but his words were very real. "Your grandmother trusted me a lot, dear," Raymond said. "She knew that certain truths might not be respected." Sarah, her eyes brimming with tears, invited him in. Inside the room, Raymond opened his briefcase and took out a sealed envelope. It was the same blue seal Margaret used on her most important letters. Beth, upstairs, could hear footsteps. The male voice made her hurry downstairs. Seeing Raymond, she paled. "What are you doing here?" she asked nervously. Raymond just smiled politely, fulfilling a request from a dear friend. Beth tried to hide her nervousness, but Sarah could already see the tense, crossed glances, filled with stories she didn't know. The letter was opened, and the truth began to seep through the walls of that house. The will clearly stated, "I leave my inheritance to those who have loved me selflessly." Sarah felt the ground drop open. There were her and Michael's names, with details, percentages, and a final, handwritten blessing. "May God protect you and keep you together, for family is sacred." Beth, shocked, tried to argue. But the paper was notarized, stamped, dated. And the signature, unmistakable. "This can't be," she whispered. But it was. Sarah felt something inside her awaken. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a message of trust, of faith, of purpose. Raymond also handed her a second, personal letter, addressed to Sarah. She read it silently, her eyes welling up. "I trust you, my girl. Keep this love, spread light. And if something goes wrong, look behind the bedroom closet." The final sentence made Sarah tremble. Was there more? That night, when everyone was asleep, Sarah went to her grandmother's old room. Margaret's scent was still there, lavender and church candles. She pulled open the heavy wooden cabinet with difficulty. And there, in the dark corner, taped to the wall, was a letter torn in half. Half paper, half truth. The edges burned. The text incomplete, but enough to make her heart race. "If anyone finds this, know that I was betrayed by my own flesh and blood." The handwriting was Margaret's. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. The letter spoke of an attempt at manipulation, a forced signature, a plan hatched by someone too close. There were no names, but the subtext screamed. Sarah knew who it was. And now, more than ever, she needed to find out what had really happened in her grandmother's final days. Meanwhile, Beth was awake. In her room, sitting on the edge of her bed, she held the real first draft of the will, the one she had forged. Remorse mixed with fear. The plan was simple: secure everything for herself. Her mother was weak. Beth had access to the lawyer, the documents, the passwords. But what no one expected was that Margaret had stepped forward. That woman's faith was always one step ahead of the lie. Michael, on the other hand, was suspicious. Ever since the funeral, something hadn't felt right. His sister, so calm, so in control. And now the surprise of Raymond's letter. He called Sarah. "Do you feel there's more to it?" "Yes, I do. We'll find out together." For the first time in a long time, uncle and niece were on the same side. And little did they know what they would find next. In the basement, among old boxes, Sarah found a photo album. But one of them was folded, hidden between the pages. It showed Beth with an unknown man, signing something in front of a building. On the back, in shaky handwriting, was written, "Be careful with him. Not to be trusted." Sarah took the photo to Michael. He was silent for a moment, then murmured, "This guy. is the former employee of Mom's law firm. That was all they needed to start connecting the dots. Margaret had uncovered the betrayal and left clues for those who truly cared about the truth. Sarah felt the responsibility grow. It wasn't about possessions or money anymore, it was about honor, justice, legacy. And she knew God wouldn't allow lies to prevail. The truth always comes out, in His time, her grandmother repeated. Beth began to feel surrounded. Sarah was more attentive, Michael more present. And then something even stranger happened. An anonymous envelope arrived in the mail, containing a piece of the torn letter Sarah had found behind the closet, but now with the missing part. Beth forced my signature, used my fingerprint, and threatened to reveal long-held secrets if I didn't comply. The weight of those words made everything crumble. Sarah, shocked, showed the letter to Michael. She deceived us. Her own mother. We have to confront her, he said. But Sarah hesitated. Grandma always said that forgiveness is a bridge to truth, and that without love, there is no justice. Still, the decision had to be made. They arranged to meet Beth. In the same place where it had all begun, the hospital room. Now empty, but still filled with memories. Beth entered the room and saw the two of them waiting for her. "Shall we talk?" Sarah asked. Beth tried to maintain her composure, but her eyes betrayed her. Michael placed the papers on the table. "Is this what you wanted to hide?" She looked at him, cried, but didn't say a word. She just fell to her knees and said, "I didn't know how to deal with fear. I was always the forgotten daughter, the one who worked hard, the one who never got any recognition." Sarah stepped closer. "But that doesn't justify what you did." Beth nodded, tears falling. "I know. But I did it out of desperation, not malice." Michael, harder, turned his face away. "The problem is, you broke the promise you made to our mother." Beth wept silently. Sarah then took out of her pocket a small rosary her grandmother always wore. "She wanted this to be yours. She said maybe one day you'd need to remember where true strength comes from." Beth took the rosary, trembling. And there, in that cold room, 3 wounded hearts met. The pain was still throbbing, the disappointment was still real, but the first step toward healing had been taken. Sarah knew the path would not be easy. But she also knew she was exactly where she was supposed to be. And what she didn't yet know was that the story was far from over. Because something unexpected was about to happen. And it would change everything again. The phone rang early that morning. Sarah answered, still drowsy, but the tone of the voice on the other end woke her in an instant. "Miss Collins, this is Lewis and Greer. Your grandmother's lawyer disappeared." Sarah fell silent. "Disappeared how?" she asked, her stomach already churning. The answer came quickly. "He hasn't attended this week's hearings, he's not taking calls, and the office is closed." Something was very wrong. Michael was stunned by the news. How come he disappeared? He was the only one with the official documents. Sarah agreed. What's more, he was the only witness to the altered version of the will. If he disappeared, then who else could confirm the fraud, or protect the truth? Fear began to take hold. Beth, curiously, didn't seem surprised. She simply said dryly, "He was in trouble." But no one asked what kind. Sarah decided to go to the lawyer's office. It was a small red brick building on an old street downtown. The sign had been removed. The windows were boarded up. The mailbox was overflowing. But something caught her eye. Shoe prints on the doormat, still fresh. She tried the door, locked. Then she looked around and noticed a security camera installed on the building next door. Maybe someone saw something. The next day, Sarah returned with Michael and requested access to the camera footage. The owner of the hardware store next door, a friendly gentleman named Ed, authorized it. They watched intently. Nothing for hours. Until, in the early hours of 2 days ago, a dark car pulled up in front of the office. A man got out with an envelope in his hand, knocked on the door, and was answered. He went in. Half an hour later, the same man came out, alone. Sarah froze. "Was that before or after the disappearance?" she asked. Ed checked. "Exactly the morning before the disappearance." Michael frowned. Who was that man? Ed zoomed in on the face. It was the same one in the photo with Beth, signing papers. That's him. The former employee from Mom's office. The accomplice. The mystery reached a new level. It wasn't just a disappearance. It was a cover-up. Sarah and Michael decided to go to the police. They took the recording, the documents, and the letter. But the investigation was slow. The police chief seemed reluctant. Without evidence of a crime, there's not much we can do. Michael persisted. So disappearing out of nowhere is normal now? The police officer just shrugged. Sarah felt a tightness in her chest. They were alone. But she remembered what her grandmother used to say, when the world turns its back on you, God will open a secret door for you. And that door appeared where they least expected it, in the church. Sarah was praying alone in a front pew when an elderly woman approached. Are you Margaret's granddaughter? Yes, I am. The woman smiled tenderly. She told me everything, including about the lawyer. Sarah was speechless. She said if anything happened to him, you should look for the Faith Archive. Sarah's eyes widened. What? The woman pointed to an antique cabinet in the sacristy. She asked us to keep this. She said it would be important to her granddaughter. Sarah ran to it, her heart racing. Inside was a Bible. Nothing seemed different at first glance, until she noticed the pages were glued together. She gently cut the side, and inside was a flash drive. That's it, she murmured. Grandma, you knew everything. At home, they connected the flash drive to the computer. It was a video. Margaret, sitting in her favorite chair, stared straight into the camera. If you're seeing this, it means something went wrong. Sarah held her breath. Her grandmother continued, My lawyer is under threat. Don't trust Beth. She forced me to sign another document. This video is my truth. And then, Margaret read aloud the original version of the will. Sarah wept. Michael held back tears. Everything was there. The confession, the explanation, the details. Margaret had planned it all. She left evidence, words, testimonies. What was done in the darkness will be revealed in the light, in the name of God, she said in the video. And at the end, she added, if you find this file, take it to Judge Carter. He is just. It was the last ray of hope. In the courtroom, Judge Carter listened intently. He was startled when he saw the video. This completely changes the case. Michael explained the fraud, the lawyer's disappearance, the hidden video. The judge nodded. I'll reopen the case immediately. Sarah thanked him. It was my grandmother. She thought of everything. But there was still one missing piece to the puzzle. The lawyer. Where was he? And why hadn't he shown up? 2 weeks later, an anonymous letter arrived in the mail. The lawyer is safe. He knew too much. But he's also afraid. There was a return address. Michael and Sarah went there. It was a remote house in a rural area. When they knocked, a thin, haggard man opened the door. It was him. You found me. Sarah wanted to know why. Why did he run away? He replied, his eyes brimming with tears, because she threatened my daughter. Beth. Once again, her name was involved in something shady. The lawyer explained everything. Beth had discovered a secret of his and blackmailed him. He'd signed the false papers out of fear. But his conscience weighed on him. The truth must prevail. I will testify. That was all that was needed. The testimony that would end the farce. But no one expected what would happen the day after the trial. And what happened was unbelievable. The house was quieter than usual that morning. Sarah, still processing everything that had happened with the lawyer, decided she needed to find more clues. She remembered her grandmother's jewelry box, which sat in the bedroom, inside the light wood armoire. It was antique, with embossed floral details, and held more than necklaces. It held memories. When she opened the lid, a strange emptiness made her flinch. The silver necklace was gone. That necklace wasn't just any necklace. It was Margaret's favorite, a wedding gift from the late Mr. Collins, worn at every Christmas, birthday, and baptism in the family. More than jewelry, it was a symbol. Sarah remembered well how her grandmother would say, "As long as this necklace is with me, I'm sure of his love." Now it was gone. And no one else knew about it, except Beth, who had been there the night before. Sarah didn't want to accuse him directly. He decided to investigate on his own. He asked Michael if he had touched the box. "I didn't even go near it, Sarah." Something told him the disappearance had more to do with the necklace's contents than its material value. Suddenly, he remembered something Margaret always said: "All that glitters is not gold, but there are truths hidden even in the smallest things." What if the necklace was hiding something? Michael thought it was an exaggeration. "Do you think she hid something inside the jewelry?" Sarah nodded. "You saw how she thought ahead. She hid a letter, a video, a flash drive. Why not something else?" Michael considered. If Beth took the necklace, maybe she discovered this too. Sarah pursed her lips. "Or she's trying to keep us from finding out." The hunt for answers was far from over, and another twist was about to emerge. That afternoon, Beth called. Her voice was strangely calm. "Sarah, can we talk? Alone?" Sarah hesitated, but agreed. They met in the park where Margaret used to take them as a child. They sat on the same wooden bench, under the golden-leafed tree. Beth took a small velvet box from her purse. "It's the necklace," she said. Sarah swallowed hard. "Did you take it?" Beth looked away. "Yes. I thought it belonged to me." Sarah held the jewel. It was cold, but its shine was still intact. He looked closely and noticed a small, unusual zipper, as if there were something extra there. "Can I open it?" he asked. Beth nodded reluctantly. Sarah pressed the zipper carefully, and a tiny compartment opened. Inside, a piece of paper folded several times. Beth recoiled. "I've never seen this." Sarah unfolded the paper carefully. It was small, with cramped writing: "If the necklace reaches the right hands, may God grant them the truth behind the lie." It was a password. Just jumbled numbers and letters. "What is this?" Beth asked. Sarah was trembling. "Grandma, she hid something online. Maybe in the cloud, maybe in an email. I don't know. But I knew I had to find out." Michael, upon hearing the password, ran to his mother's old laptop, which was still stored in the basement. He turned it on, hoping it would work. When he opened it, it asked for the password. They tried the necklace combination. And it worked. The system opened. A folder called "For When I'm Gone" flashed on the desktop. Sarah clicked it. What was there was unimaginable. Spreadsheets. Names. Dates. Values. Everything meticulously organized. It was the dossier of truth. Upon seeing the documents, Beth broke down. She knew everything. Sarah nodded. She forgave you, but she was never naive. Inside the file was evidence of transactions Beth had made using her mother's accounts while she was hospitalized. Bank transfers, insurance changes, health plan changes. Margaret knew. And instead of confrontation, she prepared justice. A silent plan, driven by faith. At the end of the file, a short video. Margaret again, this time with more tired eyes, but a firm voice. "If you're watching this, my daughter, it's because the moment of truth has finally arrived. I love you, Beth. I always have. But you chose a dark path. Now is your chance to return to the light. Confess. Free yourself. Only then will your soul find peace." Sarah and Beth wept silently. It was impossible not to feel the weight of those words. Beth lowered her head. "I didn't know that she had kept all this stuff." Sarah stepped closer. "She hoped you would repent out of love, not fear. But there's still time." Beth wiped her eyes. "Would she forgive me?" Sarah took her hand. "She already has. But now, you need to make it right." The necklace, now restored, seemed more than ever like a divine key between error and redemption. The next day, Beth did something unthinkable. She went to court with Michael and Sarah. She submitted her own documents. She confessed to the fraud. She signed a statement relinquishing her entire inheritance. The judge, surprised, asked why. "My mother trusted me. I broke that trust. But she also taught me about repentance, faith, and starting over." The courtroom fell silent. Some wept. But not everything was resolved. As they left the courthouse, a dark car followed them for a few blocks. Sarah noticed. Michael did too. It was the same car from the footage from the lawyer's office. "They're still after the rest," Michael said. "What?" Sarah asked. "These spreadsheets show bigger things. Influential people. Illegal things. This goes way beyond Beth." And so, a new door opened. An even more dangerous one. The day of the funeral dawned cloudy, as if even the sky was in mourning. Family, neighbors, and old friends from church arrived gradually, with flowers in their hands and tears in their eyes. Sarah felt the weight of her grandmother's absence in every corner of the ceremony. Beth, with her head bowed, seemed like a different person. Michael watched everything silently, trying to understand the faces that came to pay their respects. But it was in the middle of the ceremony that something unusual happened. A tall, thin man, wearing an antique gray suit, appeared discreetly on the chapel porch. He didn't enter. He simply watched from a distance, his hands clasped in front of him and his gaze fixed on the coffin. Sarah noticed him first. "Who is he?" she whispered to Michael. He looked at him, surprised. "I've never seen him before." The man seemed out of place. He stood there as if witnessing the closing of a cycle he had secretly been a part of. Beth noticed the man too. Her face paled. "It can't be," she murmured. Sarah heard. "You know him?" Beth hesitated. "I think so. But it's impossible." The mystery deepened. After the last hymn and the closing prayers, everyone began to leave. Sarah searched for the man. He was still on the porch, but as soon as he saw movement, he calmly turned and began to walk away. Sarah didn't think twice. She ran after him. "Wait, please." The man stopped, without turning his face. Sarah approached slowly. "Did you know my grandmother?" He took a deep breath before answering, "I did, more than you can imagine." He turned. His eyes were clear, but held decades of pain. "Margaret and I had a pact." Sarah frowned. "Pact?" He nodded. "An old secret, buried, until now." Michael arrived shortly after. "Who are you, sir?" The man looked at him sadly. "My name is Daniel, and I was your mother's first love." Silence fell immediately. Sarah was speechless. Michael seemed to be confused. "Are you saying that, you and Margaret?" Daniel nodded. "We met before she met your father. But life separated us. Even so, we remain in touch. Always." Beth leaned closer, listening to everything. Her eyes wide. "No, that's not true. My mother never spoke of you." Daniel looked at her sadly. "Because she promised to keep this secret until the end. It was the only way to protect the past and the future." Sarah felt a chill. "But why now? Why show up at the funeral?" The answer came with unexpected weight, "Because Margaret asked me to. She said that if anything went wrong, I should give this to you." Daniel pulled an old envelope, yellowed with age, from his inside jacket pocket. It was sealed with red wax. Sarah took it carefully. In the corner, a single handwritten sentence read, "For when the pain is greater than the silence." Beth, already shaken, took a step back. "This is crazy. My mother would never do this." But Michael, holding his sister's arm, murmured, "Maybe you didn't know everything about her." Sarah opened the envelope right then and there. Inside was a letter written by Margaret in her firm handwriting. "If this letter has reached you, it's because Daniel kept his promise. And it's time for you to know the whole truth." The letter spoke of a forbidden love, an interrupted pregnancy, a lost child, and the pain of a life of silence. But it also revealed something even more shocking. Margaret had left something for Daniel, part of her inheritance. Beth exploded. "What? This is a fraud." Daniel threw up his hands. "I don't want money. I came to fulfill her wish." But the revelation shook everyone. Sarah, teary-eyed, continued reading. Margaret explained that part of the hidden fortune was the result of an investment Daniel helped her make in secret, decades ago, even before their marriage. "He saved my life when no one else would," the letter read. In the last line, something even more surprising, If anyone tries to prevent this part of the inheritance from reaching him, it's a sign that greed has overcome love. And I cannot accept that." Michael fell silent. Sarah looked at Daniel. "Are you involved with the documents?" "With the papers my mother tampered with?" Daniel shook his head. "No. But I know who is." It was the third twist of the day. Daniel said that in recent months, he had received threatening messages telling him to stay away from the Collins family. "I thought it was a scam. But now I realize it was someone trying to erase the past." He handed over another envelope. Inside were printouts of anonymous emails, photos of Beth entering and leaving the lawyer's office, and even audio recordings. Sarah trembled. It was a much larger network than they had thought. Hearing her own voice on the recordings, Beth slumped onto the bench next to her, exhausted. I was desperate. It all started small. I just wanted to fix my life. But things got out of hand." Michael pulled away. "You crossed the line, Beth." Daniel said gently, "I'm not here to judge. I just want to do what Margaret asked." Sarah nodded. "And we'll help you do that. But the danger isn't over yet." That night, as she reread the letter, Sarah noticed a detail hidden between the lines. An underlined biblical phrase, "What has been done in secret will be proclaimed from the rooftops." It gave her chills. Before leaving, Daniel said he would return at the right time, with proof he had not yet revealed. "Margaret gave me clear instructions. And there is more, much more." And he left, leaving only the sound of his footsteps on the wet sidewalk. The rain was falling lightly when Sarah decided to go down to the basement that morning. She was still shaken by everything Daniel had revealed, but she felt something inside her pulling her toward that dark, forgotten place. Margaret's basement was filled with boxes, old church books, photo albums, and keepsakes that seemed to breathe memories. But there was one corner that had been untouched since Beth's adolescence. And that's where Sarah went. Flashlight in hand, she began moving boxes and dusty rugs. There was an old wooden chest covered in a cloth embroidered with the initials MJC. Margaret Jane Collins. Sarah swallowed hard and opened it. Inside, among old Bibles and prayer books, was a small portable video camera, the kind used in the early 90s. Beside it, a tape with a label attached, "For the Eyes of Truth." It was all I needed. Sarah ran to Michael, who was in the kitchen reading Daniel's documents. "I found a tape. It was hidden at the end of the basement." He followed her into the living room. After rummaging for a few minutes, they found an old VHS player. They carefully turned it on, adjusted the cables, and inserted the tape. The image flickered at first. Static. Then Margaret's face appeared. She was sitting in the same chair where she'd recorded the first video. But this time, there was something different in her expression. It wasn't just pain. It was urgency. "If you're seeing this, something serious has happened. And probably someone I loved betrayed me." Sarah clapped her hand over her mouth. Margaret continued, "I found out that Beth altered my will with the help of a man who attended my prayer group. A wolf in sheep's clothing. But God gave me time to document everything." With each sentence, Sarah's heart sank. Michael stared at the screen unblinkingly. Margaret continued, "I recorded this tape to confirm that my intentions are legitimate, and everything written in my documents was done with full awareness. The truth always triumphs, even when lies seem stronger." She then revealed a name neither of them expected to hear, Pastor Alan Whitmore. Sarah was shocked. "The pastor from our childhood?" Michael remembered, too. He performed baptisms, weddings. He was always with Mom. Margaret explained in the video that the pastor had reached out to her in recent years, offering legal and emotional support. He gained her trust. Until one day, Margaret saw a strange message on his phone. It was from Beth, talking about adjustments and deadlines. Margaret's heart sank. She investigated alone. She began secretly recording conversations. She wrote down times, dates, details. And she hid everything. Some of it stayed with Daniel. Some with the lawyer. And the rest, in places only someone with faith and patience would find. Sarah paused the video. Grandma was surrounded by wolves. And yet, she didn't lose faith. Michael pressed play again. And then came the most touching part of the video. Margaret held up a small wooden cross, the same one that stood over her headboard. This cross reminds me that I have been forgiven, even though I am a sinner. And because of that, I forgive Beth too. I don't want to carry her with me in my grief. But the truth needs to come out. She then looked directly into the camera and said, "Sarah, you are the flame of this family. Be the light, even when the world wants to extinguish you." Sarah wept. In the final part of the tape, Margaret revealed that she had left an envelope with a woman named Clarice, who lived in the church community in Greenville. "If anything happens to me, look for Clarice. She'll know what to do." Sarah looked at Michael. "We have to find her." He nodded. "Today." And they set off for Greenville, with Margaret's handwritten address. Arriving there, they found a simple house with flowers on the porch and the sound of hymns coming from inside. They knocked. An elderly woman with gentle eyes and a calm voice greeted them. "You're Margaret's grandchildren, aren't you?" Sarah nodded. "She left something with you?" Clarice smiled sadly. "She asked me to keep this. She said it would be her family's shield." It was a small but heavy box. Inside the box were a flash drive, old photos, handwritten letters, and a diary with coded notes. Sarah realized it went beyond the inheritance. It involved church donations, embezzlement, falsified records, all tied to Pastor Allen's name. And a final letter from Margaret read, "The church should be a place of healing, not corruption. May this truth set you free." It was more than a farewell. It was a calling. On the way home, Sarah was silent the entire way. She knew her grandmother's mission wasn't over yet. Michael, too, realized the weight of responsibility. "We're going to need help," Sarah agreed. "And we're going to need protection. Because from now on, we're not just dealing with a will. We're facing a web of lies that began at the altar." And so, the next chapter in the fight for truth approached. Beth sat at the kitchen table, her eyes lost in a cup of tea that had already gone cold. The silence in the house was heavy, as if the walls knew what was about to happen. Sarah entered slowly, carrying the coded diary she had found with Clarice. Her face was firm, but her heart was pounding. It was time to talk to her mother. Not as a daughter, but as the guardian of the truth her grandmother had entrusted to her. "We need to talk," Sarah said firmly. Beth looked up slowly, suspicious. "About what?" Sarah tossed the diary on the table. "About this. About everything." Beth didn't answer. She just stared at the cover of the diary, as if immediately recognizing what it was. "Where did you get this?" "From Clarice. The woman Grandma trusted more than she trusted you." Beth took a deep breath. The confrontation was just beginning. "Why, Mom? Why did you do this to Grandma?" Sarah wasn't screaming, but her voice was razor-sharp. "She loved you. She trusted you." Beth stood slowly. "You don't understand, Sarah. You never did." "Then make me understand. Because all I see is a daughter who betrayed her own mother and tried to silence everyone." Beth paced the kitchen like a caged lioness. "Your grandmother was no saint." Sarah's eyes widened. "Don't you dare. She made me feel invisible for years. Everything was about Michael. Then it was you. I was the one left behind. The one who cleaned, cared, obeyed." Beth's words were filled with old pain, like wounds that never healed. Sarah tried to remain calm. "Do you think that justifies lying, stealing, threatening?" Beth exploded. "I needed something that was mine." Silence fell like thunder. Sarah stepped closer. "Grandma knew. And yet, she forgave you. Because she had something you lost. Faith." Beth lowered her head. Tears began to fall. "I lost myself, Sarah. And when I realized it, I was already too far gone." Sarah stared at her. "Then come back. Come back now. There's still time. But you'll have to tell everything." Beth looked at her fearfully. "You want me to confess publicly?" "Yes," Sarah replied without hesitation. "For you. For Grandma. For me. For God." Beth sat down again, sobbing. "If I do this, they'll destroy me." Sarah came closer, took her mother's hand. Maybe. But the lie is already destroying you inside. The truth may hurt, but it sets you free. You taught me that when I was little, remember? Beth nodded between sobs. Her mother's heart was still there. Michael entered the kitchen unnoticed. What's going on? Sarah looked at him. She's going to tell everything. Beth looked at her brother. Do you hate me? Michael approached slowly. I'm angry. But I don't. I just want the truth to come out of you, not a judge. Beth shook her head. I'll do this. Sarah took a deep breath for the first time in hours. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of redemption. The following Sunday, the church was full. Sarah and Michael had prepared everything with the new pastor, a young, upstanding man who had replaced Alan Whitmore after the scandals. Beth walked up to the altar with trembling hands. I'm not perfect. I've done horrible things. But today, I choose to tell the truth. The entire church fell silent. It was as if time itself had stopped. I altered my mother's will. I deceived my family, all out of fear and vanity. Sarah watched with tears in her eyes. Beth continued, but my daughter showed me that there is still hope, that there is still forgiveness. A murmur of emotion ran through the pews. Margaret, my mother, was a woman of faith. And even after everything, she loved me. And she left proof of it. Today, I return everything I took. And I surrender myself to justice. Michael held his face, overcome with emotion. It was real. It was public. It was powerful. After the service, people approached with hugs, tears, and prayers. Sarah walked up to her mother, still at the altar. You were brave. Beth wept. I couldn't have done it without you. But as they left the church, an envelope was waiting for them in the car. No return address. Just one sentence, the truth hurts, and it's not over yet. Sarah felt her heart race. There was more. So much more. And the past hadn't revealed everything yet. The morning was quiet until the house phone rang. Sarah answered without much expectation, but the voice on the other end sent a chill down her spine. Good morning. This is the Asheville Central Clerk's office. We received an automatic notification about the registration of an old document in the name of Margaret Jane Collins. Sarah frowned. But all of my grandmother's documents have already been submitted. The operator replied, this one was found in a box of forgotten files. It's a will that predates all the others. Sarah hung up the phone without a word. Michael, listening from the hallway, already understood everything from his niece's look. Another will. Sarah nodded. And this one was filed long before any disputes began. Before Beth even started acting. Michael grabbed the car keys. Let's go now. In silence, the two of them headed toward the notary's office, unaware that they were about to discover the biggest twist of all. Once there, they were led to a private room. A staff member handed them a brown envelope, sealed with a date stamp. October 24th, 1997. Sarah's eyes widened. This is from almost 30 years ago. Upon opening it, they found a complete, detailed will, signed by two witnesses. But what really took their breath away was the name of the sole heir, Emily Collins. Emily, Michael whispered. Who is this? Sarah leafed through the document hurriedly, trying to understand. At the end, an enclosed letter, handwritten by Margaret, read, Should I not be alive when she returns, this will is proof of what I could never accomplish. My lost daughter deserves what is hers. Michael sat down. Lost daughter. Sarah was stunned. You knew that? Never. Mom never said anything. The registry office confirmed the document's validity. It was never officially revoked. And it was only digitized by mistake now, after the old files were reorganized. Sarah held the paper with trembling hands. Margaret had another daughter. One no one knew about. One who, legally, could still be entitled to the inheritance. Where is she? Sarah asked. The clerk replied, We have an address. But it's an orphanage. Closed over 20 years ago. Back in the car, Michael and Sarah could barely speak. If that woman is alive, she's our aunt, he said quietly. Sarah stared out the window. Grandma lived with this secret. And yet, she never told us. Maybe she thought Emily was dead. Their first stop was the old orphanage, now abandoned. The windows were broken, the walls covered in ivy. But in the darkness, there was a wooden box engraved with the name E. Collins. Inside the box were old papers, children's drawings signed Emily, and an envelope sealed with red wax. Sarah opened it carefully. It was a letter from Margaret, dated 1996. "My dear Emily, forgive me. I was young. I was afraid. They said you died at birth, but the hospital lied to me. One day you will understand." Sarah burst into tears. Her grandmother never gave up on that lost daughter. In the following days, they began to investigate the orphanage's records. A retired employee told them that, at the time, a young woman named Emily Collins had been adopted by a family in Georgia. She was quiet, very sweet, but she had health problems. Sarah's heart sank. "Do you know where she is today?" The man replied, "The last I heard of her, she was working at a library in Savannah." That was their next stop. Arriving at the small library, Sarah asked for Emily. The librarian confirmed. "Yes, Emily works here. She's organizing the collection in the back." Sarah and Michael walked over, their hearts racing. And then she appeared. A woman with gray hair, a sweet gaze, and features that reminded her so much of Margaret's. "Can I help you?" Sarah introduced herself. "My name is Sarah. Sarah Collins. I think you're my aunt." Emily stood still. After a few seconds, her voice came out in a whisper. "Margaret was my mother." Sarah nodded. "She never stopped looking for you." Emily brought her hands to her face, crying silently. "They said she abandoned me, that I was left alone." Michael stepped closer. "She was deceived. They told her you were dead." Emily fell to her knees, collapsing. 30 years of pain exploding all at once. That afternoon, they all sat together in the library garden. Emily told her story: adoption, foster care, the absence of identity. "I always felt like something was missing. A root. A beginning." Sarah held her hands. "You have a family. And a legacy, not just of possessions, but of love, faith, and purpose." Emily looked up at the sky. "Did she pray for me?" "Every day," Sarah replied. Emily's return to Margaret's house was silent and filled with emotion. Every corner held a memory she'd never experienced. Every photo on the wall was a portrait of a life she should have been a part of. Sarah led her to her grandmother's room. Here she wrote her letters. Here she waited for you to knock on the door. Emily wept silently. "I feel like she's still here." Sarah smiled. "She is. In what she left behind, and in what you'll rebuild." And so, an invisible piece of Collins' family history was put back in place. But there was more to adjust, and a new secret about to be revealed, in the vault hidden behind the old church. The house was fuller than ever. Emily had naturally integrated into the family, as if lost time was slowly being restored with every conversation, every hug, every shared memory. Sarah, for her part, felt that the mission entrusted to her by Margaret was nearing its end. But one detail still troubled her: the envelope left by Daniel the week before, with the mysterious phrase, "The truth is uncomfortable, and it's not over yet." Sarah decided to open the envelope herself. Inside was an old-fashioned key engraved with a number, C-17, attached, a small note. "Margaret asked me to deliver this only after Emily was found. Now is the time. First Baptist Church of Asheville Safe Deposit Box." Sarah felt her heart race. The church where Margaret had sung in the choir since the 60s held another secret. The next morning, she went to the place with Emily and Michael. The receptionist, a sweet-voiced woman, recognized the key immediately. "Ah, this one's for the safe in the archives room. Hardly anyone uses it. It was donated by a former believer. Margaret Collins, if I'm not mistaken." Sarah nodded. "She was my grandmother." The woman smiled. "She came here every Tuesday. She said faith needs roots and records." The safe was a wall safe, set behind a painting of the Last Supper. Sarah inserted the key. A metallic click echoed through the room. Inside was a single folder, labeled External Legacy. Michael's eyebrows rose. Emily leaned closer. Did she mention this in any letter? Never, Sarah replied. Opening it, they found a stack of documents and, on top, a letter in Margaret's unmistakable handwriting. If we've come this far, it's because you trusted in goodness more than in greed. Now, it's time for the final truth. The letter was long and moving. Margaret recounted that years ago, during a missionary trip to Mississippi, she met a girl named Angela, the daughter of a very poor family, raised in the church but abandoned by her alcoholic father. Margaret became attached to the girl and began sending her money every month, discreetly, for almost 30 years. She was like a daughter to me. Not by blood, but by heart. Sarah felt the air drain from her. Did she leave part of her inheritance to this woman? Yes, Emily confirmed, rereading the letter. It says here, if anyone deserves a share of what I've built, it's Angela. She represents everything I believe in: resilience, faith, selfless kindness. Michael closed his eyes. This is going to cause problems. People won't take it easy. But Sarah already knew what she needed to do. If Grandma trusted her, I trust her too. The most surprising part came at the end of the letter. Margaret had secretly notarized that 30% of their net assets were to be donated to Angela Johnson, the full name of the girl, now an adult, a nursing graduate, and living in Jackson, Mississippi. I never told anyone, not even my family, because I knew that people's hearts are tested in absence. Michael looked concerned. Is this legally valid? Sarah showed the official record. Yes, it is. Dated, stamped, authenticated. Emily sighed. Then we need to find her. Using the information provided in the letter, Sarah contacted the hospital where Angela worked. She was answered by a gentle, confident voice. Yes, it's me. How can I help? Sarah hesitated. Did you know a lady named Margaret Collins? Angela was silent for a few seconds. Yes, I did. She changed my life. Sarah smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. She left something for you, and you need to come here. Angela traveled to Asheville the following weekend. When she arrived, she was greeted by Sarah, Emily, and Michael in the same garden where Margaret used to pray at sunrise. Seeing her, Sarah knew for sure her grandmother had been right once again. Angela was simple, charismatic, and had a peace in her eyes that was touching. I didn't expect any of this, she said. Margaret treated me like a daughter, even from afar. And when she stopped writing, I thought she had forgotten me. Sarah handed her the letter. Angela read it in silence, tears streaming down her face. She never forgot me. She prepared me for this, with prayer, with advice, with love. In the following days, Sarah organized all the necessary paperwork with the family's new lawyer. Beth, who had accepted her role in past mistakes, supported the decision. If Margaret trusted her, who am I to deny it? The decision was ratified by Judge Carter. Angela officially began receiving part of the inheritance. But instead of spending it, he did something no one expected. Donated everything to open a free health clinic in the poorest neighborhood in the city. Sarah was speechless. You gave up everything? Angela smiled. Margaret taught me that what we receive multiplies when we share. This money will save lives. And that's what she would have wanted. Emily cried upon hearing this. She chose well. And Michael, with tears in his eyes, added, once again, Mom went above and beyond. At the clinic's opening, everyone was present. The entrance sign read, Margaret Collins Clinic, Healing Love. Sarah gave a brief but powerful speech. The inheritance that matters most doesn't fit in safes. It fits in hearts. The audience applauded. But what no one imagined was that very night, Sarah would receive a connection that would once again change the course of history. A deep male voice said, You have one more thing Margaret left. Something that was hidden in the cemetery. Sarah felt her skin crawl. Who's speaking? But the connection dropped. And now, one last journey would begin. One last secret, buried with Margaret herself. The connection had been brief but unforgettable. The voice on the other end of the line sounded calm, almost solemn. What Margaret left is where everything ends, and where, for some, everything begins. The phrase rang in Sarah's mind. She knew exactly what the man meant: the cemetery. The place where Margaret rested. But what else could there be there? Sarah's heart told her it was the last chapter in a long story of pain, faith, and forgiveness. The next morning, she went to the cemetery accompanied by Emily, Michael, and Angela. Each carried a white flower. The sky was clear, the sun gentle. Margaret always said days like this were gifts from God. Arriving at the grave, Sarah noticed something strange. A stone slab leaning against the ground beside the tomb was dislodged. She knelt and carefully lifted it. Beneath it was a small metal box sealed with red tape. With trembling hands, Sarah opened the box. Inside was a letter, her last. And it wasn't just a letter. It was a confession. If this letter has reached you, it's because my journey on earth is over, but my love for you remains. There is a truth I have hidden until the end, and the time has come to release that pain. Everyone fell silent. Sarah continued reading, feeling each word pierce her heart like a whisper of eternity. Margaret said that in her youth, before meeting Beth and Michael's father, she had fallen in love with a young pastor, with whom she had a brief relationship. From that relationship, a child was born. Emily wasn't the result of abandonment. It was the result of love and fear. I was told she had died, but it was a lie, and I carried that guilt for decades. Emily cried non-stop. I always knew, deep down, that I was loved. But the most shocking part came next. Margaret revealed that the young pastor who got her pregnant was none other than Alan Whitmore, the man who years later would return to her life as a spiritual advisor and, later, an accomplice in the frauds against her own family. Sarah gasped. The same man who helped your mother manipulate the papers? Michael nodded, stunned. The same one. Emily, trembling, murmured, So he was my father. Shock swept through everyone present like an icy wind. The truth, even when it liberates, also hurts. But Margaret had anticipated this. In the letter, she asked that no one blame Emily. She was a victim, not a culprit. And my hope was that one day you would forgive each other and yourselves. Sarah held Emily's hand tightly. You are family. Always have been. And nothing changes that. The letter ended with a verse, Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And then, as if part of a divine plan, the clouds parted, letting a beam of light fall upon the tomb. No one said anything. They just felt it. The presence, the peace, and the promise that everything, every step, every tear, had a greater purpose. In the days that followed, Sarah organized a final gathering for everyone involved. In Margaret's former home, now being transformed into a support center for grieving families, they sat together, Emily, Angela, Beth, Michael, and even Angela's young children. It was a group of people marked by grief, but united by faith. Sarah spoke first. My grandmother wanted us to reconnect. And that's what we're going to do. Beth apologized once again. Emily, overcome with emotion, hugged her. I don't want to live in the past anymore. I want to live in the love that's left. Angela shared plans to expand the clinic and create reading programs in honor of Margaret's passion for books. Michael said he planned to leave his job to dedicate himself to social work. She changed us. Even though she's not there, she continues to guide our every decision. But the biggest surprise was when Daniel returned. Silent, humble, and with an envelope in hand. Margaret left me this. She asked me to deliver it only when everything was restored. Inside was a check. A considerable amount. But what mattered was the message that accompanied it. Use this to continue healing. Love, when multiplied, becomes a miracle. Emily decided to use the money to establish an orphanage in Asheville in her mother's name. Angela expanded the clinic's services. Sarah began writing a book about her grandmother's story. And Beth, now at peace, volunteered at a rural church. Each, in their own way, healed old wounds with loving presence. And there, in that reunion, without an audience, without spotlights, but with invisible angels intertwining human hands, Margaret's promises were fulfilled. The inheritance was shared. Secrets were revealed. Hurts were dissolved. And faith, that was never lost. because her love was greater than any mistake. And forgiveness was the key that healed generations. Before we end this story, I want to tell you something from the bottom of my heart. Everything you've heard here isn't just about inheritances, lies, and revelations. It's about you. About me. About all of us who, at some point in our lives, have felt betrayed, forgotten, or carrying guilt that wasn't ours. Margaret wasn't perfect, but she chose the hardest path, that of faith. She could have left everything silent, taken the secrets with her. But she decided to leave light where there was darkness. And now I ask you, how many truths do you hold inside? How many reconciliations still need to happen? How many forgivenesses are waiting for a gesture? Perhaps you've also experienced an old pain, a family betrayal, an absence that left its mark. Maybe you're still trying to understand why certain things happened. And if this story served any purpose, may it be to remind you that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to let go of pride and embrace the truth. Because the truth, even if it hurts, sets you free. If this touched your heart, tell me, have you ever experienced something similar to what happened here? Have you ever had to choose between justice and love? Would you forgive someone who hurt you as much as Margaret forgave Beth? What would you do in Sarah's place? Take advantage of this moment and share your experience, your thoughts, or even your question in the comments. Who knows, maybe your story will inspire someone else too. And if you want to continue following stories like this, full of emotion, faith, and lifelong lessons, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This helps me immensely to continue this work, which I do with so much love. May God bless you with wisdom, discernment, and a peace that only He can give. And may the love of your family, even imperfect, always be greater than any mistake. Because where there is love, there is always hope.